The ham radio world has been flooded with the cheap UV5R handheld ham radios that offer fully functional dual-band operation, VHF and UHF, as well as the ability to receive FRS and GMRS channels and FM broadcast radio, all for as little as $18 a piece. It's fantastic to get so many capabilities for less than the cost of a typical walkie-talkie radio, but after using them for a few years, quality issues tend to show up. These include shorter battery lifespan, loose battery connections, failing charging cradles, sloppy belt clips, and a gradual loss of water resistance. Another limitation common to very inexpensive radios is weaker receiver filtering, which can make them struggle in areas with a lot of nearby transmitters or electrical noise. For many people, these issues don't show up right away. A radio that sits in a drawer or gets used once or twice a year can seem perfectly fine. The problems tend to surface when radios are relied on more heavily, left in vehicles used during storms, or pulled out repeatedly over time. In preparedness situations, equipment is often stressed in ways it never is during casual use, and that's where the difference between entry-level and better-built radios becomes much more noticeable. This is why many radios don't fail during normal use, but instead fail when they're needed most. Batteries that seemed fine slowly lose capacity. Charging contacts loosen over time. Displays fade or speakers weaken. These are not dramatic failures, but small degradations that add up, and they tend to reveal themselves during extended outages or repeated use when there is no easy replacement available. I still recommend the UV5R as a starter radio, and for cheaply stashing radios in places like vehicles and get-home bags, where you do not want to leave a higher-priced unit susceptible to heat, cold, and theft. In those environments, radios are often exposed to temperature swings, vibration, and infrequent charging cycles, which tend to reveal weaknesses in lower-cost designs over time, but it also pays to round out your radio. Set up with a few more reliable options that won't break or fall apart as easily during the heavy use we might expect in hard times. Here are some of the more reliable radios in the next tier up. Until Chinese radios like the Baofeng appeared on the market, the four major ham radio manufacturers, ICOM, Yaesu, Kenwood, and Alinco, were all based in Japan, where they built a reputation for high-quality products. In 2012, and when the UV5R first appeared and introduced dirt-cheap handheld radios from China, these manufacturers effectively lost the bottom end of the market. The major players are still around, producing higher quality radio equipment that generally works better and lasts longer. For preparedness use, that difference often shows up in clearer audio, better receiver performance, and radios that continue working after years of storage or regular use. In practical terms, preparedness radio use often involves far more listening than talking. Monitoring weather alerts, emergency traffic, or local coordination channels can provide situational awareness long before information reaches phones or news outlets. In those situations, receiver quality, audio clarity, and battery endurance matter far more than having the longest feature list. While most brands have narrowed their offerings to higher-end radios, Yaesu has continued to offer some solid entry-level models that are small and easy to learn. Most of these radios are now manufactured in China to keep costs down, but they maintain a noticeably higher build quality, which is reflected in their higher prices compared to Baofeng radios. That higher build quality is usually apparent in tighter battery connections, better speakers, and more consistent performance from one unit to the next. The closest reliable alternative to the UV5R is the small and simple Yaesu FT 4XR, $109. This compact radio really shines in operating time, delivering up to 15 hours on a single charge. It transmits on the VHF and UHF amateur radio bands, but does not include FRS or GMRS channels from the factory. Some users choose to modify or unlock the radio to enable additional frequencies. One downside of the small size is that the buttons are even smaller than those on the UV5R, which can make them harder to see and press. Where this radio clearly improves over cheaper handhelds is in received clarity and overall audio quality, especially in areas with multiple active signals. For only a few dollars more, you can step up to the larger and more ruggedly built Yaesu FT65R, $133. It features larger buttons and includes 4 quick recall keys for frequently used frequencies. The display is slightly clearer than the FT4XR, and the menu system is a bit easier to navigate. Despite having a larger battery, the FT65R has a shorter runtime of about 9 hours per charge. That shorter runtime is largely due to higher transmit power and a larger, brighter display, which trade efficiency for usability. Both the FT65R and FT4XR are capable of receiving NOAA weather radio alerts and alarms. This can be particularly useful for monitoring severe weather warnings when other communication systems are unreliable. If you want the ability to monitor aircraft and marine communications, you'll need a radio that can receive AM transmissions, since most ham radio communications use FM. In that case, consider the reasonably priced Alinco DJVX50T, $99. This radio receives AM signals in the 118 to 135 MHz aviation band, in addition to the standard VHF and UHF amateur bands. It is also the only radio on this list with an IP67 rated dust and waterproof housing. An IP67 rating means the radio is protected against heavy dust exposure and can survive immersion in water for a short period of time, conditions that often disable less rugged handheld radios. Yaesu also still offers the FT60R handheld, $160. A radio that has remained popular with ham operators for over 20 years. It supports true dual band operation and is capable of transmitting on one band while receiving on the other, as long as one is VHF and the other is UHF. This feature is commonly referred to as dual watch or cross-band receive. The radio is water resistant, though it does not carry an IP67 rating. Many operators continue to choose the FT60R because of its excellent receiver quality and long-term reliability, even though the design itself is older. It can be modified to receive additional frequency ranges by removing a small internal resistor, but doing so will void the manufacturer's warranty. When choosing between these radios, it helps to think about how they'll actually be used. Smaller radios with long battery life work well for lightweight kits or extended carry. Larger radios with bigger buttons and brighter screens tend to be easier to use with gloves or under stress. Radios with better receiver performance are easier to listen to for long periods, especially when monitoring active channels. And in wet, dusty, or rough environments, durability can matter more than extra features. One common mistake is relying on a single radio with no backup. Another is storing radios without spare batteries, or never testing them after programming. Many people also assume that range alone determines usefulness, when in reality, reliability, clarity, and the ability to monitor information consistently are often far more important during extended outages. I still recommend the inexpensive Baofeng UV5R for situations where a cheap ham radio makes sense, but over time, the lower build quality can result in reduced reliability and a shorter usable lifespan. I recommend that most people add at least 2 radios from a more robust brand to their collection, ideally with spare batteries and accessories, so they have dependable communication options when phones and cellular networks aren't working. Whatever radios you choose, reliability matters more than raw features. A radio that turns on every time, holds a charge, and can be clearly heard is far more valuable than one packed with options that may fail when conditions are less than ideal. Preparedness isn't about owning the most gear, it's about owning equipment you understand, have tested, and can depend on when normal systems aren't available.